this is so unbelievable. I've been probably the most loudest and aggressive against Bernie Sanders, even to the point where it made people that even somewhat radical uncomfortable. You guys saw Dr. Wester's kind of response to my video. He didn't tone politically, but when people see my criticism, Bernie, like, man, come on, man, give him some benefit of the doubt, man. No. How angry you are at Bernie Sanders, you should be even more upset at him. And I can say that because no one did more for the Bernie Sanders campaign as an individual probably than me. Quit my job, knocked on thousands of doors in multiple states, gave up my labor. Seeing people volunteer their labor, volunteer their money, only for this warmongering psychopath to weaponize the police state on their own supporters. Like, fam, it's not like RBN, Nico House, Jimmy Dore, you know what I mean, was there. You know, the people that was openly hated by the Bernie Sanders left. He sicked the police on his own supporters, Copink, an organization that is still pretty friendly with Bernie Sanders and the squad, all things considering. It's through this good relationship because Copink is serious anti-war activist. It's because of this relationship where they wanted to hold him accountable. You want to know the reaction of Bernie Sanders? Sicking the police on them. So I found a few clips there, and I threw the statement together last segment because I saw this like an hour before the show, and I'm like, this is the main story. This is unbelievable. I have little to no respect for Bernie at this point, but it's even shocking to me to see how far he has fallen. So I'll play a few of these, and I'll get your response here. Actually, no, let me go to the Code Pink tweet first. So this is tweeted by Code Pink. Breaking. Several arrests happening. Senator Sanders' office, as we remind him that he knows diplomacy is the answer. We need to pursue peace in Ukraine. So these people are protesting and holding Bernie accountable for his neocon votes in Ukraine. So let's watch this video, and then I'll get your guys' thoughts, and then we play some more.
Why are you getting arrested, Jody? Why?
It says that Bernie is for diplomacy. I'm here to remind him that he knows diplomacy is the right thing. He knows peace is the right thing. We're here to tell him we need peace. He needs to call on Biden to go to the negotiating table. Not go tell us that Putin won't, because the United States isn't. Do it. Do it. Let them fail. You're failing right now. Let them fail. People are dying. This happened. I was here 21 years ago, and they didn't listen. And 6 million people are dead because of the war in Iraq. We have to listen. War kills, weapons kill. We have to stop this war. People are dying, and the people in the United States are paying for it.
Does the people in the United States want a war?
No, the people in the United States do not want a war, and they're paying for it. Not only are they paying for it with their tax dollars, but they're paying for it in the shredding of this literal fabric of society. When we think that weapons are the way, what happens? Then the only way that you can have a discussion, the only way that you can work on differences is with weapons and guns. That's not how it happens. Nothing is solved with weapons and guns. Nothing.
Why does this even have to be said? The NATO left and the Bernie Sanders left is so unhinged, they are now repeating the war is peace line. We're bombing for peace in Ukraine. Ignorance is strength. Freedom is slavery now, according to people. What she is saying here is common sense. But the entirety of the NATO left is completely going along with this war that's killing hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. An entire generation of Ukrainians are wiped out. But they think they care. I'll let the video finish, and I'll get your guys' thoughts before I show some more receipts.
Where's the leadership that models sitting down at a table and coming up with some agreements? This has to end. We have to stop the war to World War III.
When you used to say the anti-war. What do we want?
Peace. What do we want now? What do we want? Peace.
So Sabby Sabs, our RBN sister, was there at the event covering the Coping protest. So they did an action where they went to Bernie office, and Bernie Sanders arrested his supporters, people who supported him. Not just protesters, but supporters, because they called him out for his vote. They pulled his own quote which I'll read because I actually haven't read it now. So let me see what it says. So Bernie's quote said, "We must work hard to achieve a realistic and mutually agreeable resolution, one that is acceptable to Ukraine, Russia, and the United States and our European allies. So let's sit down, let's negotiate, and let's come up with a diplomatic situation." He said that in October. That's a year ago, literally a year ago, maybe like give or take a few days. A year ago, I didn't know Bernie even said that. I didn't, to be honest. Didn't even know he said that. His votes is completely counter to that, obviously. Just show he's a bullshit. But I'll start with Aaron first this time. What's your general thoughts on this? And Bernie sicking the police state after war activists. It's like it's unbelievable.
I mean, it confirms, I think, what any of Bernie's critics would have said, especially Michael Parenti. Michael Parenti broke with him many years ago over the issue of Yugoslavia. And the more that you look at Yugoslavia, the more it becomes clear that it was orchestrated by the U.S. They inflamed ethnic divisions, and they supported separatist candidates in order to break up Yugoslavia because since the Cold War had ended, they didn't feel they needed to tolerate a big socialist neutral country anymore like Yugoslavia. They'd rather just break it up into small bits. And so that's what they did. And then when the carnage unfolded, the U.S. said, "Oh, look at this, all of this barbarism. We need to come in and intervene." And Bernie backed that. And there was more than enough information at the time that people should have known. I didn't at the time because my political education hadn't really progressed that far. In fact, my mom worked for a congressman who was one of the people who was responsible for moving the U.S. toward intervention, which I didn't really get an appreciation of until I was older, and the guy had already died. It was a strange thing. His name was Frank McCloskey. But Bernie, I mean, his politics, when you look at it, he wasn't very far to the left. Both RFK and Cornel West are way, way more on the anti-imperialist left in their positions than Bernie is. But
I have criticism of RFK Jr. and you heard
there's plenty
before.
there's plenty of
but
my
there's
point
Bernie
is that,
people. Sorry, I want to let you continue. I apologize, Aaron, but there are Bernie people that think that RFK is to the right of Bernie. I got criticism of RFK.
They think he's to the right of Biden. They think he's to the right of Biden.
Bernie's to the right of RFK.
This is the discourse.
Sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
So Bernie wasn't very far to the left on the empire, and the empire is the main thing. All the other politics in the U.S. they're so messed up, and they do impact people's lives in a real way. But the core problem for the U.S. that makes us not really a democracy is that this country got taken over by an imperial-minded oligarchy that used the U.S. position over the rest of the world at the end of World War II to go for global empire, and they have tried to control as much of the global political economy as possible, and they tried to recreate colonial domination with sort of neo-colonial system, and that has been the story of the last 80 years or so. This is and Bernie is not the person to speak to this. The biggest problem we face is the empire, and Bernie was never the person to confront that. His campaign now seems like just a sort of embarrassing sort of DSA meeting gone wrong or something at this point, and the empire is still there. It's staring us all in the face, and it's the thing that we have to figure out a way to overcome. And not just us, but the rest of the world. The rest of the world needs to somehow find a way to end this imperial regime in the United States and redirect U.S. politics and U.S. history in a constructive way where we're not just trying to screw as much of the world as hard as we can for as long as we can. This has gotten us to this terrible point with American society suffering from this, and the rest of the world suffering under U.S. domination to varying degrees. It's got to stop. And Bernie was never the person to do that. He was far too cowardly, and he cared far too much about remaining part of the establishment to ever really threaten them in any way.
Look, this is the most disgusting part of it, because I actually didn't see this, so I want to read this right now. Breaking: 50 activists, Vermont constituents, and former Bernie supporters. So I didn't know I knew they were Bernie supporters, but they literally hit constituents. Nigga, this is Joe Manchin level evil, fam. Arresting his own constituents for calling for peace. Because so people like AOC would say, "Oh, you're not in my district. You're not in my district. Yeah, I'm a sellout, but you're not in my district." He literally arrested his own constituents. He is so far gone. And former Bernie supporters are taking over Bernie's office to demand stop sending money to Ukraine, and you guys saw he was arrested. I'll just play one of the videos, and Andrew, I know you want to get in here. I'll just play one more. There are a few of these videos you guys saw us playing them on mute. I will play this video, the one. Actually, I'll play this one. This last one. I'll play this video, and I'll bring you in, Andrew. We just play one more.
To end the war in Ukraine, end U.S. funding for the war, no funding for war, funding for health care.
Jimmy Lee's
housing.
from Burlington, Vermont. He's a constituent of Bernie Sanders getting arrested.
What are we demanding Bernie do, Jimmy?
We want him to end the war, speak out against the war. If he spoke out against the war, it would make a huge difference. It wouldn't make a huge difference. He's lined up for using and abusing Ukrainians. And he's been supporting using and abusing Vermonters who live in the terrible noise zone of the F-35 at the airport. 115 decibel F-35 taking off and landing in a city, it's a crime. And Bernie supports that. He's the supporter of assaulting people.
We need peace.
1,000 children live in that noise zone.
Shame.
How many Bernie supporters are being radicalized right now as we speak? Because that guy said Bernie is he's responsible for violence on the supporters. Now, actually, I want to get Andrew. What are your thoughts on this, Andrew, before I continue?
Yeah, I don't know. I very much appreciate how frequently you and, some other people who really have some stones are willing to cast them at Bernie Sanders. I mean, one of the best points that I think that you've made that really hit me right in the feelings is when you're talking about how many times at Bernie's campaign events he was having people on who were in wheelchairs, who were on dialysis, who had family members die of extremely preventable diseases, and was saying, I'm gonna fight for you guys. And then, completely, he has no shame. He has no shame at all. Taking pro-imperialist positions. I think Aaron's very right. I wish that I had known more about Bernie's support for the war in Yugoslavia. And I think it should have made, if I had had a little bit more political education at the time, I think it would have made a bigger difference to me that he even supported the war in Afghanistan. If you know anything about the war in Afghanistan, there were, the possibility of the Taliban even collaborating with the U.S. to hand over bin Laden, but it's very clear that that's not really what they wanted. They wanted an enormous war zone on top of $30 trillion worth of raw materials right on the western borders of China. And then I'll send one more thing real quick. Since we started talking a little bit about Uyghurs, this is Bernie Sanders' statement to the Council on Foreign Relations, along with all of the other Democratic candidates in 2019 or 2020. So, thanks to Aaron, I know who the Council on Foreign Relations are and have been for a very long time. And for Bernie to feel like he even needed to say this to anybody, much less, an extreme right-wing faction of oligarchs who run U.S. policy, he's saying China is engaged in a program of mass internment and cultural genocide against the Uyghur people. Again, like, I have yet to see any really compelling evidence of this. What I could see in the worst possible way I could interpret what I've seen is that China went a little bit overboard with a very much needed counterterrorism program in their western regions. Again, like, you have Afghanistan touching Xinjiang, and you have Pakistan right there, and there's parts of Pakistan and certainly that more remote areas of Afghanistan where the U.S. has been operating extreme right-wing death squad paramilitary groups since Jimmy Carter was in office. So Bernie supported that in 2019. He's supporting that in 2019. It's not that Bernie's not going to learn. Biden's not going to learn. These people are extremely old. And if you really think that Bernie is just making like honest mistakes and not that he didn't care about all those people he promised things to that really needed them twice in a row, he cared more about his own career and his comfortable end of life and his ability to still be in the media with some degree of positivity.
Yeah, one more thing I want to say, because I did say this in my last segment regarding the genocide. It's such a weird genocide because where are the bodies? Like Yemen is a genocide. How many starving and dead children have you seen from Yemen? That they horrify me. One of the things that turned me anti-imperialist. Go ahead, Google Yemen children genocide. You see 1,000 pictures of skeleton children who were starved by the U.S. regime. You see children that suffering through disease because of chemical attacks that the Saudi regime authorized as well. Like there's all these horrible pictures, right? No bodies, no pictures of Uyghur genocide. And you guys think that the Western media wouldn't have that plastered everywhere if there was bodies, if there was evidence of that. Just saying. But anyway, I want to show you guys this to wrap up the Bernie statement because this is beyond shameful, right? Where you have Marjorie Taylor Greene outflanking Bernie Sanders on this issue. So Bernie Sanders, the quote-unquote leftist, had protesters arrested for challenging war. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the right-winger, met with these people, chat with them, and did photo ops with them. Let's be honest, we know this is a photo op. Marjorie Taylor Greene knows exactly what the fuck she's doing. We know what she's doing here. This is a fantastic political move. But what does it say that Marjorie Taylor Greene can do this, but Bernie Sanders is not? Right? How do you allow this to happen? Like the same way that how you allow Marjorie Taylor Greene to call you out, AOC, for being complicit with the climate crisis in funding Ukraine. So I'll read Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweet. I'm going to give you guys a reaction because this is extremely damning. And we are smart people. We're critical thinkers here. You guys know this is not me coming out as a supporter of Marjorie Taylor Greene. You guys know I don't like her. You guys, I don't think she's that genuine. But what does it say that she's doing this, but Bernie Sanders getting these people arrested? This is what her tweet said. The war in Ukraine must end. Today I met brave Code Pink activists who protested for peace in Bernie Sanders' office. We had 11 of them arrested. Peace and free speech shouldn't be a partisan issue. Jesus fucking Christ, man. You're going to have Marjorie Taylor Greene that now forever going to be able to have this over Bernie Sanders. You got peace activists arrested them. You think I'm right wing? Well, she won't say that because right wing is a good thing for her. But that's the obvious conclusion I come to with right. Last thing I'll say here, we don't agree on most things, but we do agree Congress should stop fueling the war in Ukraine. Wow, man. You guys think I enjoy doing these segments? Absolutely do not. I told you guys yesterday, I'd rather be doing a segment about AOC ousting Pelosi as speaker instead of doing an anti-AOC segment. But unfortunately, because the politics we live in is so fucked up, we gotta say, look how you got crazy motherfuckers like Marjorie Taylor Greene doing the right thing while Bernie Sanders arrested. So any last thoughts on this statement, and then we'll cover the RFK segment real quick. So any last thoughts? I'll start with Andrew this time, then Aaron.
I feel like this goes into the RFK segment, but I'm very much opposed to almost ever in any way supporting any more political candidates who decided on their own to run. If there's no type of party apparatus or even like some other type, it could even be as simple as like a sort of a voters league or something like that, where people are sort of like independent voters and have, you know, decided for a large Venn diagram overlap of policy that they want to support somebody, because otherwise there's no accountability whatsoever. I mean, these people, you see, Code Pink is like the most potentially Bernie friendly kind of, you know, actually left group out there at this point. They don't really you know, they definitely have criticized him for similar things as you, but they are not like, their criticisms are not like loud and angry and biting. Like they're the easiest people for Bernie
They
to try.
still consider Bernie a friend, and that's like their message. Their message is like, yeah, he's still a friend, but we criticize him. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, this is really telling of who exactly Code Pink are, and the fact that Bernie is not willing to look them in the eyes, and in fact is going to go ahead and have the Capitol Police escort a bunch of, you know, kind of at this point old timers from Burlington, Vermont, out of his office. I mean, it really shows how little he gives a fuck about ordinary people. He clearly fears the people more than he fears fascists and authoritarianism.
You know that he knows he's wrong on the Ukraine issue. It's the reason why the NATO left been avoiding this. And I said this consistently for months on the show. Bernie Sanders, AOC, and the squad was given strict instruction not to speak about the Ukraine war. Because if they did, their lack of knowledge will expose how fraudulent the war is. And also, Bernie Sanders and AOC have to maintain their face. They have to be the protagonists of politics. They're the baby face, if you know wrestling terms, right? So they can't come out for war. So you shut the fuck up. You virtue signal over domestic policies that Democrats will never allow. And we allow the war go on. But you do not speak on this at all. And they follow that so strictly. They follow that order so strictly that Bernie Sanders arrests motherfuckers for bringing it up to him. Because if Bernie Sanders was a good faith actor that believes he's acting in good faith, wouldn't he engage the activists? Wouldn't he be, hey, you guys are our supporters. So the reason why we support Russia, because we don't want Russia to invade Europe. We want to degrade the Russian military. You're gonna hear Bernie Sanders sound like Mike Pompeo. We want to degrade the Russian military. We don't want to send China signals that Taiwan is okay to invade. You know, he's gonna sound exactly like a neocon, but he doesn't do that because he don't want to be exposed to that degree. So I think that's very telling. Like if Bernie Sanders truly believed he was right, he'd be doing a PR tour on this, explaining why he voted for NATO, explaining why he voted for what he does, but he doesn't because he knows he's wrong.